Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low magazine? Because 4Low magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. Well, thank you for joining us again with Conversations with Big Rich. Today on the show, we have Bruce Shallis. He was a longtime rock crawling competitor in the Pro Mod class, and also he's the owner, or one of the owners, of Rausch Creek Off-Road Park. Let's talk to Bruce about what it took to become an owner of an off-road park. Well, Bruce, thank you for joining us today on Conversations with Big Rich. This is an oral history of rock sports, and this episode especially about you and Rausch Creek. So first of all, I'd like to know a little bit about Bruce. Where did you grow up, and what were some of the influences that you had that got you to where you are today?
Okay. Well, first, thanks for inviting me to this, Rich. Honored. I watched a couple of the casts already, and I felt like I wasn't worthy of this, so thank you for the invite. So I grew up in the hotbed of rock crawling right outside of Philadelphia. As you can imagine, there's rocks everywhere. Honestly, I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Newtown Square, Pennsylvania. Went to college in Central PA, Millersville University, and my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I were on just a road trip on a Sunday, and there was a 90 YJ sitting in a used car parking lot. She actually went the following Monday and maxed out her Discover card, and she said, "You gotta go figure out the rest of the money." So honestly, that is how I got started in the off-road world.
That's pretty awesome that the wife was the one that went out and got it going.
Yeah, I had to figure out the rest of the money, but yes, it's all her fault.
Well, figuring it out later is always better than asking for it in advance.
True, very true. So, from there, just like everybody else, local four-wheel drive club. It was actually through Quadratech that someone had a little jar that said, "Hey, drop your name in here," and this is before the internet and everything. So wrote your phone number down, and I got a phone call, "Hey, we're going on a trail ride." And I showed up at a parking lot, I think at a convenience store, and we went wheeling in the coal regions of PA. From there, somehow became president of the club, then VP of an association of different clubs in the area, Baltimore Four-Wheel Drive, PA Jeep. Who else was in that club? Someone from, I'm losing, it feels like forever ago, but there was a bunch of different clubs in an association. And I was afforded the chance to actually go tour the property, which is now Rausch Creek. And at the time, Paragon was right up the road. And everyone's like, "Oh, we got Paragon. And everyone kind of let Rausch Creek go. They're like, "Oh, well, nothing there, So about 5 or 6 months later, I called the guy who we met with, and I said, "Hey, can I take a few days and hike the property?" And honestly, that's how I got started. I hiked the property. I actually found stuff that we didn't see on the original drive around. And from there, I just said, let's go for it. I've always had a business in my world right out of college. I was partnered with my brother in a commercial cleaning service. So owning a small business didn't scare me. So, threw $500 in a checking account with my business partner, Lynn Ehrenfeld, and we went at it. Lynn is actually the hero of this thing. You should be interviewing Lynn. Lynn actually did most of the mapping and a lot of trail cutting at Paragon before she left there. So it was a natural fit for me to bring her in. She is more of a Jeep and off-road enthusiast than most people realize. I think she's got 5 Jeeps right now.
Wow.
So yeah. So between Lynn, myself, and then there was a third partner at the time, Mark Lecture. He helped out. He was big into mapping and whatnot. So between the three of us, we got it going. Got local clubs involved, and we started laying trails, cutting trails, and we had a soft opening, in April 2003. So that was that's a cliff note of how we got started.
Perfect. Now we'll delve into it a little deeper. What was was there something before four-wheeling, Jeeping, 4x4, whatever you want to say, that got you outdoors? There had to be a love of outdoors as
Oh yeah.
begin with,
Well,
right?
I'm sure if you asked, some of the guys still, I know like Lance still does it. BMX. I raced, competed in the freestyle world, fishing. Those were the things that kept me straight as a teenager: BMX, fishing, and actually lacrosse, playing lacrosse. My father passed away at a young age, so I kind of had to figure out things to keep myself busy on my own. So those 3 things are really what kept me motivated.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have 3 older brothers, none of which turn a wrench, none of which fish, none of what. No, they're all just like suits and typical Philadelphia, stereotypes. They don't do anything outside except for a little bit of boating. That's about it.
A little bit of boating, okay. So what was the first car you ever owned?
Oh boy, what was that sucker? It was a what year was it? I should know this right off the top of my head. The Dodge Dart, 4-door. I bought it from an old lady, and that actually had studded snow tires. And I drove it with studded snow tires for 6 months because I couldn't afford new tires. So do what you got to do, right?
Yep, absolutely. Mine was a 54 Volkswagen Bug.
I can see
first
you
year of
driving
the
that.
oval window.
Okay.
Second owner.
That thing would be worth a mint right now.
Yes. Yeah. I sold it so that I could move from Utah back to California.
So not knowing anything about cars at that time, all that broke on it was the U-joint. That's it. And the garage I took it to said, well, it took out the drive shaft, the U-joint, and I believe he probably said like the slip yoke, I don't know, whatever. And I'm like, to me, that was like, okay, the car, just total it. Knowing what I know now, it's 2 phone calls and a drive shaft's at my door the next day. So
Yes. So you got the YJ. You went on a trail ride. Any modifications done from the time that you bought it to that first trail ride?
the funny thing is, my wife will remind me every once in a while. We were at a Jeep Jamboree in New Jersey, down in the Pinelands, and guys from Iron in the Pines, most of them were trail guides. And I remember I said to the guy on the second day, I'm like, hey, can I step it up a trail? He goes, are you modified? I said, yeah, I got 30s. I'm like, he goes, you're not modified. And I'm like, well, I got new tires. They're modified. 6 months in owning a Jeep, to me, that was modified. But no, actually, when the TJs first came out, I bought one as a daily driver, and I stupidly put a 3-inch lift and 33s on it. And, come on, that was badass at the time, right? So I took that out once, and that was it. The YJ went away, and started modifying the TJ 8 times, 9 times, like all of us did, instead of just doing it once like we should have.
But we didn't know any better.
Right, 3-inch to 4-inch to, short arm, long arm, just then high 9s and
Exactly.
4-link.
If there was a book, a how-to book, you want to get into Jeeping or 4-wheel drive, pick your platform, and then this is how you do it. But again, then it's always
or just flip to the last chapter. Go right to that.
Or just flip to the last chapter. That's the one when you're signing it off to the insurance company.
Yeah. Actually, I sold it to a guy in Iron in the Pines. That's the irony of this thing. So Chris Walton actually has my TJ now.
Nice.
So he's if you remember, he's spotted for Kurt.
Yes. Yep. I remember the name. Cool. So let's talk about the park, and once you guys decided to do the park, what were some of the steps that you went through with the property owner?
Right.
Because you leased it, right? You leased the property?
Correct. I mean, as you can imagine, on the East Coast, land value is silly. Not many people can afford throwing millions of dollars at property just to go drive off-road vehicles on it.
Right.
So, yeah, we approached the guy already had a area for ATVs and motorcycles. So he was a motorsports guy. He also did coal mining and timbering and different things, but it wasn't like new to him. So we basically signed a lease and we formed a company, and he got a percentage of the gate, and that's how we did it for, well, up until about 3 years ago. That's how we ran it. So for 17 years almost, that's how we ran it. Finally, Lynn and I are actually a little bit more stable. We have some equity in the land, and I think everyone needs to know that, because I think most people hear, oh, it got a lease, it's in jeopardy. And I think that's important to know that Lynn and I actually have vested interest finally. So all those years of hard work actually paid off.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
But going through the townships and the state and the DEP and DCNR, and it's not as simple as, hey, I got land, let's open an off-road park. And as you well know,
those are some of the stories that I want to talk about.
Okay.
It's like an event promoter. People think, oh, I just show up and put cones on the ground, and there's a lot more to it than that. Even though we've got it down to a science after 20 years of doing it.
Right.
So let's talk about what it took, some of the agencies you had to go through and the hurdles you had to jump over, and to get that thing open, and then what's reoccurring.
I think once you get everything set, it's not as bad as most people think. So that's the lucky part. But getting to that point, you got to find the township that can work with you, the county that will work with you. In this case, the state that will work with you. We were lucky enough to, again, have a sister company that did ATVs and bikes that already had something to mirror off of, but we're two different worlds. I mean, especially here on the East Coast, the terrain is so rocky with trees. It's not like the open desert or the open Johnson Valley kind of scenario. So we had to separate the two parks because the Jeeps and the ATVs coming on these little tight trails just didn't work. So they had something to mirror off of when we submitted our paperworks and our business plans and whatnot. It wasn't as bad because it's the coal region of PA. They're looking for any kind of economic growth in that area. So they welcomed us as long as we, fell in line to certain guidelines. No creek crossing, no driving up streams, cross streams and roads at 90s, things like that. Common sense things to anybody that lives around here. You just can't go up and down the roads like you do in some other states.
Makes sense.
So it's that whole, like, we'll call it the New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore mentality of, you just don't do that. You don't take your dirt bike up and down the road without, you get back home really quick. You just don't do that around here. Okay. So it was very easy for people to buy into that kind of thing.
So what of that process, what was the most difficult of dealing with DNR and any other agencies? I would imagine it was all state agencies. The
local was probably the toughest, because they see, $50,000 tow rig and this huge Jeep and a trailer, and they just see money. They don't understand that. They just see money, so they want their piece of it. So you got to make sure you work with them to accommodate their wants and needs, and try to find that balance of giving them without giving too much. And again, I think that's why you got to find a township that's willing and wants you there.
Okay.
Not just the property. The property could be the easy part. It's the red tape past that. Can you get it all open?
Okay. Of course, you've got to carry insurance, like all of us do.
The key thing that, Rich, is the right insurance.
Correct.
And I'm not saying that some people don't, but to have the right insurance is very costly.
True.
I think how many policies could you probably have got away with, but you're like, yeah, that's not the right one.
Yeah, I made sure that we did it right. I just found the best companies, or the least expensive companies to work with, This year we had to change companies because of our underwriter, the insurance company that we had, their underwriter. Every year they sit down and negotiate a contract. Well, they hadn't gotten their contract negotiated by the time we needed to start the season. Of course,
Okay.
now I have no idea because we got one event in and threw the anchor out, because of this COVID thing. But the insurance now is costing us more, but I think it's more stable because it's a company that's been around for hundreds of years, or not hundreds of years, but for years, that has been
Sure.
dealing with event series and everything. So
We've had the same broker now for close to 15 years, I think. And he shops, he does his due diligence with that, but there's only a few carriers, as you know, that will do this sort of thing. So you
yes,
just kind of play them against each other. And unfortunately, it's a very large number. And I think most people don't get that. They just think it's land. It's the liability that's the biggest problem.
yeah, because we have to insure everybody against the guy that's going to come out there and be an idiot, including himself.
It's that 1 percentile, or not even the one, it's point whatever.
Right.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the underwriters, they sit on YouTube and they'll do YouTube searches. And as soon as they see that idiot that was at your facility, well, they just jacked up your rates. And that's why I think people don't understand when we're tough on people and say, guys, you can't do that. We need to play within these rules. Have to be of age, different things like that. It's not because we are tight. It's the underwriter who doesn't get what we do, sitting in a cubicle writing the rate.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like with us, they're like, well, you have motorized vehicles and you have spectators. We can't let the two come together. And it's like they're not going to.
Right.
We're moving slow. The people can get out of the way, any roll zones, and we have to educate the insurance companies, because same thing, they look at like what rock bouncers are doing
Mhm.
and just drag racing into a rock wall. Well, then they think, oh, that's what rock crawling is. Or guys out trail riding and racing around, or even with what guys are doing with like Ultra 4, that style of racing, it's completely different. We had to educate our insurance carriers on that as well.
We didn't have much hurdle in the racing end and the crawling end when we had our series in house. That wasn't as much of a problem as it was going to an offsite facility. We do a lot of demos and set up for different events offsite, and that was the biggest hurdle, because now you're adding a ton of spectators, people who don't know what to expect, and that's where the underwriters got nervous. And
Makes
again,
sense.
look, you can say you have insurance, but to really have the right policies in place is not cheap. And I can't say that over and over to anyone who's thinking about getting into something like this. You got to have your ducks in a row.
True. Where you said that Lynn is still at the park, right?
Yep, she is the absolute anchor. And
Okay.
most people who wheel Rausch would know that.
Right. Well, you had said something before she left, and I thought,
Oh, left Paragon.
oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that she was part of Paragon.
She was a volunteer. She wasn't paid or anything. She
Okay.
did a lot of the mapping, and again, she was part of a couple different four-wheel drive clubs, like the rest of us. So she was always up there. Lynn was probably going to kill me if I tell her that. She's actually a paralegal by trade.
Ah,
She did that for like 30, I don't know how many years she did it for. So, she brings a background of the legal aspect, which was huge as well.
excellent. So you got the park, you got it up and running. I know that you changed the entrance location, because that when I first talked to you, it was like we came out there and looked at the area, and all the rocks were overgrown, which of course that's pretty much anywhere that we go, the best rocks are always overgrown. But you guys did a lot of work to open those up, and then you moved the entrance.
So believe it or not, it wasn't by choice, but it was probably the best thing that had to happen. So welcome again to East Coast and Pennsylvania. We call it the old parking lot, or the plateau, was part of a bond that I think it was DCNR basically said, okay, you got to reclaim that land, lower it, And then for 5 years, you can't touch it. You can't drive on it. You can't do anything. Then after the 5-year bond's up, you can do whatever you want. Exactly. Don't even try to figure that out. So we're like, okay, what do we do? So we figured, let's go to the top of the mountain where it's the flattest, build a new parking lot. And where the competition course is basically all the old stumps and logs and everything that couldn't get chipped or pushed. We buried it and made, so the comp course is actually the remains of the parking lot, the trees and the rocks and the things that we had to push out of the way.
Great filler material.
Yeah. And I know, I mean, I have a video. It's me in the living room talking to my sons and my wife. And it basically said, I think it says, "We Rock's coming, Big Rich is coming, concrete's not sprayed yet, parking lot's not done yet." That was like a week before the event. But well, you know that story.
Oh yeah, we've built man-made courses the same way, where we are finishing up the course on like Wednesday, and competitors are starting to show up on Thursday, and we're struggling. I mean, it happened in Spring, Texas. It happened in Boyd, Texas. The one that we built in Reno for Reno Rocks in the parking lot of the Sands Casino, we built that, and then it was sprayed it like the Monday, Tuesday before the event, and then tore it down the Monday, Tuesday after the event.
Mm-hmm.
And to see all of that money that went into the concrete, even though the Sands is what the casino paid for it, it was still heartbreaking to know that, we put all that effort into something that just went away.
Yeah. When we built it, and I know when I remember when Little pulled up, he was like, "Really? This is all we got to work with?" I remember the conversation clear as day. And I was trying to remind him, we built this for our customers as well as competition. And, as the years went on, as you saw, we built more mounds of concrete. We did more things. But that amount of money that you just talked about is why we didn't go gangbuster right off the bat. I mean, we did it hand to mouth money-wise. We didn't go in the hawk to spray.
Right.
So that's why we did it in chunks. So, the best thing that ever happened was the DCNR said, "You got to move." Because we built the new parking lot and we built the comp course.
So how many acres did you start off with, and how many acres do you have now available?
It's pretty much the same. We have 1,700 acres on the one side of the road and just over 1,200 on the other side. So it's just under 3,000, give or take. When you really get wheelable acreage, is just under 3,000. Which, and some are going to argue that's not much. East Coast wise, that's a good chunk. The thing is, as you well know, trails change with time and wear and weather. So people who maybe don't come for 6 months to a year, some of their favorite trails are totally different because they've been just beat on.
Yeah, some get harder, some get easier.
Exactly. Yeah.
We see that at the Hammers.
Right.
One good rainstorm can change everything.
I was watching the feed this year, and I remember, because I was sitting right above that one climb on, I don't know which wrecking ball, I lose track on which ones they were, and I said that didn't look like that a couple years ago.
Yeah, having run Chocolate Thunder for the amount of years that I did for Dave, there was, as you come up Chocolate Thunder on the left-hand side, what was the good line all of a sudden became, I swear it was like a 15 or 20 foot vertical, just a waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
And it became totally impassable from one year to the next. And then a couple of years later, at that point, then all of a sudden the left line became the preferred line.
Right.
And because it filled back in again. So it always changes, which is, that's a nice thing. I remember when we were trying to keep the Escalante Grand Staircase area open in southern Utah, and the Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance, SUA, was working with BLM to close it all down. They kept saying, well, we kept talking to them about, all we want is the canyons. We don't want the open hillsides. We don't need the ridges. We just want to keep those natural flow areas, the drainages. And they're not full-time drainages. There's not water running in them all year long. It's only during the fall, during the monsoons, or during the spring when the snow's melting. And they couldn't understand that everything changes and everything moves and washes away. And, it was really frustrating, but, we ended up losing all that because, a handful of environmentalists had lawyer money. So,
and I think that's why East Coast pay to play, off-road parks, whatever you want to call them, here, that's why they're so important, because the little bit, I mean, look what happened at Teleco. I don't want to knock on wood for anybody. I'm shocked URE still is open, because that's getting used a lot. And I know that's changing dramatically.
yes.
So that's why I think private parks are not as bad as most people portray them to be, because you're giving a legal, safe place for people to go who don't have anywhere else to go in this area. And then people say, well, I know of a trail. Come on, you're trespassing. Let's just call it like it is. Just because there's a sign, not a sign up, doesn't mean it's yours.
Yeah, I remember when they started working and shutting down the area in Shamokin, Shamokin, or whatever you call it, how
Shamokin.
the locals that had been wheeling that area were really upset that they were going around gates.
Oh yeah.
And, cutting the locks, whatever. And then, they had to tighten all that up. From what I can tell, the locals are more accepting of that now that they know what's happening. But still, it was those partiers that just want to go out in the woods, and they think that it's legal to go dump stuff and, create little habitats wherever they want as a party pad.
Classic line, one of the locals said to me, quote unquote, "It's my mountain. It's been my mountain since I've been a kid." I'm like, you don't own it. Yeah, but it's my mountain. So, I mean, that's just the mindset. And I get it. I mean, if I lived there, I probably would have felt the same way. Here are all these guys from outside the area, city boys, if you will, coming up. So we tried to do our best to support the locals. The locals had a hunt club, actually just burnt down a couple years ago, that they had pig roasts and things like that. So we would go out and support them. We would hire some of the locals to do work, and wherever we could use an extra hand, we tried to stay local that could help. So you got to build that trust level with each other.
Yeah, we did an event in Cougar Buttes down in Johnson Valley.
Mm-hmm.
There, of course, there's no trees. It's just wide open. We've got an area that's probably 20 acres that we have permitted to use for our rock crawl.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was 30 acres. But anyway, it was just, here, this is the boundaries I need. And there was one road, one main dirt road coming up to it, and of course everything out there has got whoops through it and everything. So, but we're sitting there, I'm up above it in the comp area, and I can see this truck come up and take off and go on a smaller dirt road or cross country to come up and bypass the spectator gate.
Mm-hmm.
So then I see them park, and I figured, if they just keep going, they can keep going, no problem. They get out, they park, they get out, they start grabbing ice chests and chairs, and then they're going to walk the half a mile in to where we have the event. So I meet them partway out there. I told them, I said, "Hey, do you have your wristbands?" And they said, "No, she didn't give us any." And I said, "Well, yes, she would have. So I need you to go back down there and get your wristbands." "Well, we're not going to bother with that." And I said, "Well, you're either going to bother with it or you're going to leave. That's the way it's going to happen." And there was 2 guys, 2 kids, and a woman. And they were probably in their 30s. The guy starts to argue with me, and he goes, "This is my mountain. This is my backyard." And I'm like, "No, this happens to be everybody in the United States recreational area. It's not your backyard." And he goes, "Well, I live right down the road over here, and I'm not paying to come onto my property." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, we have a signed lease for a small period of time to use this for a commercial endeavor. And he goes, "It's my backyard. I'm not using it." And I said, "Okay, let's discuss this." I said, "What do you do for a living?" And he goes, "Well, I'm a house painter." And I said, "So if I live next door to you and we don't have a fence, are you going to paint my house for free?" "Well, no, of course not." And I said, "Then why are you coming into here expecting to come to, to get some entertainment for free?" He goes, "Well, what's this cost you to do it?" And I told him, I said, "I have permit fees, I have insurance, I have toilets, I have staff, all the different things that, the infrastructure, everything else that was involved with the event." And he goes, "Well, it doesn't matter. We're going in anyway." Because there's two of them, right? So they're going to go walk around me. And I said, "Kids, is this your dad?" And the kids looked at me and said, "Yes." And I said, "I want you to pay very close attention because your dad is teaching you a valuable lesson today." And the dad looks at me and goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Kids, your dad is teaching you how to steal."
No, I thought you were going to say get arrested.
He thought about that for a second, said some words that probably weren't appropriate in front of the kids, but I'm sure they'd heard him before.
Oh yeah.
And then turned around and walked back to his truck and they left.
Funny. Well,
But
didn't that happen to Dayton like year 2? Weren't they coming up over the field at the top of the ridge there?
no, what happened in Dayton, because they own that property way around that.
Okay.
And it's all fenced. And I don't think but there was some people there were some kids up there that were trying to take banners.
Oh.
And
Okay.
Little Rich saw them, and they didn't realize that Little Rich was as fast as he was then. Because, and he took off running, and they took off running, and he got to them before they got very far.
Okay.
And he surprised them.
The funny thing is, I think back to the Dayton events, and I don't know which year it was when there was thousands and thousands of people. They were some of the best rock crawls, to be part that I was part of. I mean, I had the chance to do, at Seam of the Year out front. Was that URock?
Yeah, it was the URock Super Crawl.
URock. And then, Salt Lake City and some of those, Spring Texas was a good one. But I think Dayton's were always the most fun. At night under the lights with the crowds, the whole bit.
And
good times.
Mud wrestling, t-shirt contests.
I know nothing about any of that stuff.
No, me neither. I was already asleep by then.
Preparing for this interview, I started thinking about all the different events. The things, like the one that was the weirdest was Sasquatchy. That was an odd event.
That was a nightmare event.
I just remember
the amount of rain that we had on Friday night,
mm-hmm.
and we were breaking cars trying to get to the start lines. And
I can't remember what course. We couldn't get through the start gate.
Right.
That's when I was spotting for Gavin Lewis, and we hammered for 5 minutes. I looked at him. I said, "Let's go back off."
Yep. There was just so much rain. It was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the reason we've never been back there.
It was an interesting layout. Just wasn't conducive up and down the hill. And
no, it wasn't. So what people don't understand, the amount of how rock crawling first started competitions.
mm-hmm.
If you look back to the very first ones, talking with Ranch Pratt earlier, we had his first event was Farmington, and
mm-hmm.
they used 2 different trail systems that were like a mile plus apart. So you had one set of courses going up through some trails and using the different obstacles. So you basically had to start at the bottom and work your way up.
Mm.
And the same thing happened with those old pro rock events down in Las Cruces and at the Hammers, Johnson Valley, is they did the same thing. They used the trail system and just worked their way up. Cody
Right.
Wagner talked about how he had gone there with Jason Bunch and was rolling Jason's spare tire up the canyon to get from one, just to work their way up the obstacles. And so once the cars drove through, the rest of the team came through, all the next car staged so that they could get, he was pushing this competition tire up the mountain the whole way. And he said that's right then he decided he didn't want to be crew anymore.
There was one of the comps that you came to at Rausch. You would always park your trailer on the back side, back where we call the helmet.
Yep.
And one of the teams parked behind you and wanted to be like right next to you and was adamant that they needed to be close to the competition course to fix something. I'm like, guys, no matter where you park on this property, you're like 30 seconds away. I use the Squatchy. I'm like, you had to go down the mountain, around the corner, and then wait for the traffic to be one-way clear to get back up. I'm like, stop it. You're being silly.
Exactly. We still get some of that, where everybody, it's how soon people can get there to get the best place to put their team to park.
Yes.
And everybody's in the same parking lot. Baghdad last year, not this year, but last year we had to park everybody down the hill because they just put the road in on Wednesday to get to the comp area. Well, there had been snow on the ground all winter. So cutting a road in wet ground, there was no way to get up there. And so this year we got all the area cleaned out around the event area so that we could take teams up the hill, but still those guys that had the Class A motorhomes or the semi-trucks decided not to go up the hill. But like I told them, I said, well, I made it, but I got my semi-truck up the hill.
Wow. Well, there's a couple sites that were like that. I mean, even Jellicoe was rough for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jellicoe getting up that hill. I jackknife. I had the 6,500 top kick and the 44-foot race trailer that was loaded to the gills. And we got like 3/4 of the way up that hill, broke traction, and I had to back down. Yeah, well, that would have been great if it was a straight road with no crown. But with the crowned road in the corner, I ended up jackknifing the truck and the trailer, trying to back down the hill. And we finally got some buggies that were able to get around me and pull us straight and to pull the trailer around so that we could straighten it out, so I could straighten it out and make another attempt at it. But we were there for 4 or 5 hours trying to get my trailer up the top of the hill.
Just to go get set up.
Just to get set up. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and that's partly why we did what we did with the comp course, by building it right behind the office and the parking lot. And look, it was never going to be like the elite. Like I think back to like the site in Columbus, Ohio, I think it was. There were some really cool features there. We could never have produced those because of the financial and whatnot. But we try to make this comp course user friendly, not just to the everyday guy, but when we did have events. So
I think you guys did a great job.
I wish we could went higher and bigger, maybe a little bit more steeper. But again, you're confined to what you can afford and work with.
Correct. And I do like that there's some natural rock formations on the edge to where, we can still throw those in. I wish I had time to get out there with a chainsaw and open some more of that up because some of that stuff's grown up and over. But
well, when you come out, we have a new guy. He's a part-time guy, and he's OCD. The comp course is cleaned.
Really?
He's
awesome.
been, yeah. He's been when he's bored, he goes out there and cleans the comp course.
Don't let that guy go away.
Right. So let's talk about the team. The team that you guys put together. Well, which one? I mean, really.
Well, the group.
Oh, the one with everybody, with Kurt and everybody.
Yes.
I think it's got to go back even before that. I mean, I started competing with Dave Kemner. As Charlie was talking about your first drivers meeting.
Yep.
And how everybody was slamming you and you're trying to kill us and everything. I drove.
Were you one of those teams?
No, I drove my TJ in that.
Okay.
Kyle's like, come on, dude, I need a couple more stock class rigs. and my Jeep was not set up for that. But I did it. I did it. Then after that, I spotted for Gavin Lewis in the Pro Mod or one of them. He had a CJ on coils, so that would have bumped him up to like Pro Mod or whatever it was at the time. And then Dave Kemner built a moon buggy, so him and I competed for a bunch of years, just him and I, as Team Skunkworks.
Okay.
Lockheed Martin finally sent him enough paperwork as a cease and desist, so that name had to go away because like the packets kept getting thicker. Like, you cannot use Skunkworks anymore. Dave was building Charlie's buggy at the time, the rear steer, rear engine. Dave was doing some really cool stuff. So it was Gavin Lewis, Kurt Shramovich, and Dave, each with stock mod and unlimited.
Correct.
Yep. So we had 3 full circle rock racing is what we called it. We had buggies in each class. I think we did that for a couple of years, following your East Coast series, which was a blast. It was a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of money. Those guys, I could never have done it what they did financially. They put a lot of money into that time. So it was fun though. We had some great competitions.
Absolutely.
Good memories.
And Shramovich ended up being national champion.
Yep.
In the mod stock. Yep.
Yep. Kurt and Chris, and then Gavin and I did pretty well. Actually, it was Gavin and Ron Lynn. No, yep. Ron Lobb at the time, and then it was Dave and I. Dave kind of had enough. I think the financial and the travel, he just had enough, and that's when we all shake up, and that's when I started spotting for Gavin Lewis. And that's kind of when we broke away from the whole full circle a little bit. And then, oh geez, I'm losing track on history a little bit. Then after that, Ron Lind, who some of you guys know as R2, he was our team mechanic. So when Gavin retired, R2 built a buggy and started competing. And Ron Lobb and Ron Lind still compete in your events now. So yep. They're still at it. But I think the rest of us, unfortunately, we're all out. I can't think of one guy that still competes except for them, right? East Coast wise.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, Carl Shortridge a little bit, right?
He has not competed in the last 3 years, but
okay.
I understand that he's putting something together. I'm not sure if he's got it done yet. I know his priorities were family, and which I totally agree with. Work and family should always come before your hobbies. Mm-hmm. And everybody knows that nobody's going to get rich off of racing or rock crawling, or very few have the chance to. I mean, if you can get your bills paid, that's awesome, but very few are going to strike it rich. And it doesn't matter if you're a promoter or a landowner or a team. It just doesn't. It's not going to happen, for most people.
And I think that's what happened with me when our second son came around. It was like driving all night on a Friday, driving all night Sunday. You start missing things. I'm proud to say that I've given up a lot of the rock sport stuff because of the kids, but I wouldn't change it. I coach as well now, so I think that's it brought a different element to me out. So I think it's for the best at times. Trust me, I miss it. There's times where I'm like, I watch a video, I'm like, or I see a video pop up, I'm like, oh man, I wish we could go do that again.
So what's in the future? I know a lot of parks, especially in the central part of the country, are putting in cabins and infrastructure to keep people on site so that they'll stay longer. I have not seen that on the East Coast. It's typically, maybe a little campground, but nothing, of course, no wheeling at night, that kind of thing.
So we have the engineering plans together to build a campground. To be honest with you, it's financing. It's not just financing. It's always economics. Should you do it now? Should you wait? we have the plan in place, and we were getting closer to pulling that trigger. This whole COVID thing, that might stall it a little bit. Unfortunately, I mean, as much as we need it, and I think it would help. It would help our local community, our four-wheeling community, stay longer. The wife would want to come more. The whole bit, we get it, but it comes back to economics. It's not something you just throw together.
No.
So we have the plans. I'm hoping that within the next year or two, we can kind of get things moving on that. Hopefully, this COVID thing kind of hopefully goes away and we get back to normal, whatever that new normal is going to be.
Oh, I hate that term.
I did quotations. I think we'll be able to get this done here in the next couple of years, and then that's a game changer. Allows people to stay longer. Real quick, you're talking about East Coast parks. I mean, a lot of people don't know. 2 years ago, where were we? Yeah, no, 2 years ago on the date almost. Lynn and I took over Burning Rock Off-Road Park in West Virginia, and they had been open for 10 years prior to us taking over management of it. And they have everything. They did it right from the get-go. They sunk a lot of money. They have cabins, they have RV hookups, game room, general store, showers, I mean, they have it all because they were able to. The coal company invested all the money into the infrastructure. So we took it over 2 years ago. That's 2 years ago, April, and it had it closed. So it was a re-education process that was back open. That place is massive. It's 10,000 acres, and it services everything: side by sides, dirt bikes, full size. It didn't have full size when we took it over, so we're introducing the full size Jeep truck market to it. But prior to that, it was just ATV and quad and side by side.
Very nice.
So if you get down that way, you should check it out. Like I said, it's full service. It's got everything.
Does it have rock formations that could be used for competition?
And that's the problem. The biggest rock piles that you would want, or we would want as a competitor, are like what we talked about. You gotta go down that road, up that road, that sort of thing.
Yeah, too hard to get to.
Right. I mean,
More
from the
difficult.
racing perspective, it's great. There's plenty of go fast trails and throw some rocks in here or there. So that works fine. But the crawling comp area is not there.
Cool, but I'd like to take a look at it.
And you know what? In the future, it could be. There's a spot to build it, and that was kind of our goal as well. Being year 2 into management, as you well know, as a business owner, you get solvent money-wise, you get things in control, and then you start building. Well, again, back here we go with COVID.
Yeah.
So this year might be a wash that way, but hopefully in the next year we start introducing some of that stuff to it.
Cool. So, any plans to expand beyond 2 parks?
If the situation was right, absolutely.
Awesome.
We've looked at some others, but back to the original question you asked me: township, state, local. You're gonna get pushback from the neighbors. Is there a stream nearby that has a native trout that the trout fishermen are going to get upset about? Is there a bird that the Audubon Society is going to get up? You got to look at all those factors.
Yep, true enough.
Yeah, we would absolutely do it if we found the right spot.
So, what is personally your plan for the future outside of the park? Family wise, anything like that? You guys got anything in the works that you'd want to share or talk about?
We're kind of in that grind, like a lot of families with one kid in college, one in high school. We're kind of stuck for a little bit with that kind of. People say, well, move the kids. We've been a true believer: let the kids finish where they started. I have a son at Susquehanna University, and I have a freshman in high school. His year got all screwed up, just like everyone else's kid. He's got 3 more years, and again, I coach high school lacrosse, so my goal is to ride that course, until he's done high school, and then we'll see. I had an opportunity to go coach in college as well, so that might, that's a personal goal of mine. That might come back out in a couple of years.
Very nice.
It's not
Didn't
just
know
about
you were
rock
that
sports.
didn't know that you were that big into lacrosse.
Yes, I played in high school and after high school, and again, it kept me out of trouble when I was a kid. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So anything that you want to talk about or say to the customers at your parks, or to the anybody that you know that might be listening to this? I mean, all them old rock crawlers are
Yeah,
listening. It's
right.
amazing.
And it's funny, when Charlie was talking about all the stories, it was really cool to. I thought of some stuff I hadn't thought of in years. First, I guess I want to thank everybody. I want to thank everybody who patrons, not just my off-road park with coming to Rausch but to all the off-road parks, because we are a huge part to the four-wheel drive community. I just think a lot of people don't realize that, especially I'm going to say West Coast, because it's not needed as much.
Right.
But on the East Coast, I just want to thank everybody. I think it would be cool to get some kind of reunion together. Maybe not everybody compete, but just maybe add a competition, see all the old faces again, tell some stories, see the kids that are no longer kids. You see these, like I think Kurt's son is 14 now. I haven't seen him in probably 10 plus years, things like
Wow.
that. So yeah, I think that would be cool to try it. Maybe when you come to Rausch or something
Love
like that, or
that.
one of those, try to get everybody out for after the Saturday's event.
That would be really fun. Maybe I'll put the word out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that we can. So everybody that's listening to this, I'm not even sure the date that we have set up. I believe it's in July.
I would have to look as well.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll get that into the show notes. So anybody that's listening to this podcast, look at the show notes. Come on out to Rausch Creek for the We Rock event, and let's have a party Saturday night and a get together and reminisce about old times and find out what everybody is into nowadays. That'd be really fun. Thank you
It would be
for bringing that up.
And maybe you'll give a little light to some people coming back to the sport. Might get those juices flowing again.
Yeah, we have Cody Wagner wants to run all the Eastern events, so he's planning on being there, and as well as Dayton and here in Texas as well. So once we get the season up and rolling again in another 4 or 5 weeks now.
By the way, I'll say this for all the East Coast guys, Rich. Hannibal, Missouri, and Texas is not East Coast.
I understand that, but there's only so many places that we can go.
I know. That was always. I was always like, we're like, how is this East Coast to these guys?
and it's, to be honest, there's this big natural fence that goes through Colorado called the Rockies.
Yes.
So anybody on the western side of that thinks of everything beyond Colorado is east.
Oh,
now,
okay.
I've been coming back and forth for a long time, and I know that east really, really is to me, it's the Mississippi.
I was going to say Mississippi to us is like middle.
That's why Hannibal was only, as the crow flies, a mile off of the river. So,
yeah,
but
that was a fun event as well.
Yeah, it was. Especially, what was the name of that bar? Milt's. Old Milt's.
I don't think we went to that one.
Oh, you're probably lucky. You saved yourself
I did go to
the
I did go to the Starlight Bar in Jellicoe.
Oh, the Stab-A-Lot. Yeah.
Stab-A-Lot. Yeah, I found that out later, but yeah.
Yeah. That was even riskier than old Milt's.
That's all right. We had Kurt with us, so we were fine. Kurt actually got up on stage and talked to the crowd with the band.
Nice. See, those are the kind of stories. Those are awesome. That's the kind of stuff we have to reminisce and talk about. Maybe we'll do it and we record it, but I won't put anything out there that's too embarrassing.
Exactly. All right.
Well, Bruce, thank you so much for coming on with me and talking about your history and the park's history and some of the things that you went through and how you got to where you're at today. It's been a pleasure knowing you for all the years that we've known each other. Haven't seen you physically in quite a while,
Because you always came in travel lacrosse season. I'm usually on some field somewhere in Delaware or Jersey coaching. So
there you go. Well, that's what happens.
Yeah,
so anyway, Bruce, thank you for coming on board and being part of our podcast. Thank you.
All right, you got it, Rich. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.